On Wednesday's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, with the playoffs looming, it's time to break down some first-round playoff series X factors, guys who could make the difference for their team come round one, and of course, doing what we do, baby, feeding you our locks of the night and top DFS targets to put some cash in your pocket. Let's go.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Degenerate gamblers and hockey heads unite and stand up. This is your show. It is the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Mr. Steel Roden and Big Flip Livingstone. We are here every single day, Monday to Friday, holding your hand, getting your back to make some money on the DFS target boards, big-time betting as well, and of course, breaking down the biggest fantasy news in the NHL. On today's episode, my friends, we will be taking a look at all of the above as well as some big-name first-round playoff X series factors, some guys that could be making the difference for their team. Steel, I love me a little X factor conversation. First of all, everybody, thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Steel and I appreciate that love. So make sure you're out there dropping a review, hit us with some comments, make sure you are smashing that subscribe button. Steel and I appreciate that love every single day. Speaking of which, my friend, I want to get right into this. We know big-time bets are coming. We know DFS targets. We got that. We are doing what we do. But with the playoffs looming, Steel, sometimes in these playoff series, a player emerges, maybe someone who we didn't expect, that really gets it done for their team. It happens every single playoffs. And so what I wanted to do today is highlight who we think those players could be ahead of time so people can keep their eyes on these guys. Let's do it right away, my friend. Let's dive into it. Playoff X Factors, first round edition. Who are you taking a look at?
Yeah, I think the first guy that really stood out to me that I think can be an X factor and that has been an X factor in the past is Brandon Saad of the St. Louis Blues. He's he's playing with David Perron and Ryan O'Reilly. That line got bumped down to the second line, being the second line because of how well Tarasenko, Thomas, and Buchnevich have played because they got bumped up to the first. But He's been an X factor in the past. He's a very consistent guy. He puts up 45 to 55 points every single year. Super consistent. 91 games of playoff experience, 50 playoff points, 2 Stanley Cups with the Chicago Blackhawks. We've seen this guy be an X factor in the past. He's got 46 points in 72 games this year, which is 9th best on the St. Louis Blues roster, which the top 10, I believe the top 9 guys are all forwards, and their forwards have been really putting the puck in the back of the net in the last couple of weeks. But I think Brandon Saad could be a very, very good X factor of the St. Louis Blues. We've seen him do it in the past. He's great on the wing. He's a very streaky guy as well. I think that's my first X factor going into the first round of the playoffs.
A guy like Brandon Saad with that goal-scoring ability, sometimes he goes red hot, he goes ice cold, but if he can find his game, and I think that's really kind of what we're highlighting here with all of these guys, if they can get on one of those little runs that they're known to do, especially the 2 guys that you're talking about, they can really turn the page for their group. Playoff hockey is a whole other beast, Steel. I know we both talk about this a lot, and I think you've done a really good job of highlighting 2 more veteran guys who have done this before, which is awesome. I'm looking at 2 guys with limited playoff experiences who I still think have the option to really, be one of those guys that maybe the opposing team is going to sleep on just a little bit. And the first guy is Noah Hanafin, who only 15 games of playoff experience, former 5th overall pick, is having a career year for Calgary. I know we've talked about Rasmus, or you've shown some love to that whole Calgary blue line, and I think he is a big reason why. Career best, 43 points, 2 goals shy of his career high of 10 goals, playing some of his best hockey right now, and is red hot heading into the playoffs in terms of point production, Steel. And that's why I like him to potentially be a first-round X factor. If he can continue to play the way he's playing right now, I think the Calgary Flames are in for a little bit of a run here. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I think you're onto something because you and I talked about this at the trade deadline. Calgary, that might have been the only problem that they needed to address before, the trade deadline ended. was maybe bolstering up their blue line. And you're right,
True.
Noah Hanafin, Rasmus Andersson, those guys have really stepped up for the lineup. And if those two guys can, can generate some offense, be a little bit of a difference maker, I like that pick a lot. He can be a very good X factor. It all just depends in the first round. Because we know the Calgary Flames can, sometimes get bounced relatively early in the playoffs.
Well, actually, before I throw it back to you for your X factor, I'm glad you said that, because how about they haven't been past the second round since 2009.
Yeah.
So we know the book is out there. They need to get out of that first round for sure. Who else are you looking at, my friend?
Well, I'm looking out east now, and it's the back-to-back champions. It's Corey Perry playing on the fourth line. He's played on the fourth line for the last 3 years, with Montreal, with the Dallas Stars as well. He's only averaging just over 13 minutes a night right now, but he's still having a pretty solid year, 36 points in 75 games, a handful of games left on the season. He's probably got the most playoff experience out of any player heading into the playoffs, maybe besides Jumbo Joe on the Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
But look, he's got 167 playoff games, 108 playoff points. He's an absolute pest to play against. I kind of correlate or relate this kind of guy to a Brendan Gallagher type of player as of right now at the stage of his career. He goes to the front of the net. He's a pest to play against. He gets under your skin. He agitates you. He draws penalties. And that's what you need from a fourth liner, especially in the playoffs, because when you're on the power play time, you can really take advantage, and that can really, be the difference maker of winning a series or losing a series. And he's one of the best to do it, especially in the playoffs. And maybe finally he can, actually win the cup this year, because he's been to the finals the last 2 seasons.
So close.
And he's looking to get his second Stanley Cup ring ever. So maybe he can finally do it again this year and get the Tampa Bay Lightning a three-peat in the process.
There's a bunch of veterans every single year who you wouldn't mind seeing getting another rip at the cup. Perry's one of the guys that's there, but he's won one. You got Jumbo Joe in there, Jason Spezza, Mark Giordano, who's 52 years old. No, I'm kidding. But, you have those guys in there that have never won. Perry's one of those guys that's been there before, but you still wouldn't mind seeing him back in there. And look, everything you just said, check mark on every single one, because Corey Perry is the kind of player that makes a difference in those dirty areas in the playoffs, and you've seen it from him before, and you've seen it on almost every team that's won the cup for the past 10 years, whether it's Patrick Maroon or whoever. Somebody makes an impact with it, and it doesn't have to be offense, right, to be an X factor, does it, Steele? Hits, fights, big block shots, whatever it is, you can be an X factor, and I think that these players that we're looking at all have that potential. And honestly, we did not talk about our guys before. All very different players, all on different teams. So that's a really awesome conversation that we're having, and one that we will finish right after we pay these bills, baby, and right after I tell you about HelloFresh. They deliver pre-portioned ingredients to your door, including farm fresh produce that arrives within a week. You get the convenience without skimping on the quality. Miss out on the next trip to the grocery store. Save yourself the long waits in lines and ensure you don't waste any money on excess food. Customize your favorite dishes with their new Hello Custom offerings by swapping out one protein or a side for another, upgrading a more luxurious experience by adding a protein to a veggie meal. It's all delicious. It's dinner time, and I'm getting hungry, Steele. That means more choices, more variety, and more meals truly tailored to you. Go to HelloFresh.com/LockedOn16 and use LockedOn16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. It's HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
Thank you for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. For your next listen, you have to check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from our local experts. You don't want to miss out on all the highlights. It's free wherever you get your podcasts, just like this podcast right here. So if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Flip, you said it yourself, anyone can be an X factor. It can be a forward, it can be a defenseman. Yeah. I was going to, just an honorable mention right here. Please. I was going to mention Sergei Bobrovsky as an X factor as well for the Florida Panthers. I think we know how talented they are up front. So much depth up and down their forward group. They're going to get Aaron Ekblad back, hopefully in the first game, maybe even the second game of the first round matchup. Hopefully he can be the same as we saw this regular season. But I think the real difference maker needs to be Sergei Bobrovsky, but that's just me.
Well highlighted, and honestly, a nice segue into my last player, because we know the Florida Panthers are the highest scoring team in the NHL, good defensive core. Bobrovsky is the question mark. Is it going to be him? Is it going to be Spencer Knight? I don't know if the Florida Panthers really even care, to be honest. I'm sure they'd prefer the guy they're paying $10+ million a season to be the guy, and realistically he should be, but I'm sure in a heartbeat, if he starts pulling the Peter Mrazek's backstroke in there, he'll be out in a hurry, because this team went all in, and I'm sure they won't be leaving it to Bobrovsky if he doesn't get in there, and that's a really good point. Lastly, my X factor, a rookie, Anton Lindell. We've talked about the Panthers a lot, and I think we've talked a little bit about this third line as my favorite third line in the game, playing in the middle with Sam Reinhart and Mason Marchment. Man, that is a good line. In my opinion, I almost named that whole third line as an X factor opportunity, because we know the top six on the Florida Panthers are going to get theirs. Can this third line play a little bit of a shutdown role and also chip in with some goals? This kid deserves some credit. And I think, Steele, because of the sensational seasons of Moritz Seider, Michael Bunting, Trevor Zegras, even the Lucas Raymonds of the world, no one's really talking about Lundell, who in a full 82-game season is on pace for 59 points, only played in 60 games, had a couple of injury issues, 18 goals and 25 points, 3 goals in the last 4 games. And like I said, with so much attention being paid up front and for good damn reason for Huberdeau, Barkov, Claude Giroux, Verhaeghe, all these nasty guys in the top 6, this third line has a big opportunity, especially in the first round, to be an X factor and to contribute, for which I think they're going to get some good looks on that third line, given how good the top 6 is, Steele.
Yeah, and you also make a great point of that entire line being a potential X factor, because we've seen all season long that all 3 of those guys have moved up and down the lineup, creating different lines and chemistry, and have still continued to work as well. So Mason Marchment, Anton Lindell, those guys are 2 guys to definitely look out for come the playoff time, because those guys have been absolutely solid for the Florida Panthers.
Thank you.
But let's jump over to the DFS segment. Only 4 games on the schedule for Wednesday night. And I don't know about you, but the first game I'm looking at is the Washington Capitals taking on the Vegas Golden Knights. And I'm going with the Washington Capitals for my DFS selections. They're on a 2-game win streak. They're 7-3, 7-3-0 in their last 10 games. They took down Colorado Monday night 3-2 in a very, very close game as well. And I think the Washington Capitals have played really well against the Vegas Golden Knights in the past, especially a couple of years ago in the playoffs when they won. But I'm taking Alex Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov, and I'm also throwing Martin Fehervary on the back end. I'm going to save a little bit of my money, so I'm not going to take John Carlson. But I think because Fehervary is playing with John Carlson as the first pairing, he can bring a lot of value to my lineup. He's only got 15 points, but 232 hits on the season, 111 blocks, and like I said, he plays on the top D pairing with Carlson. So potentially some some chipping in offensively, but with Alex Ovechkin, he's going to be premium price, over $7,500, obviously, because he's scoring the goals. He's making the plays up front. And I'm taking Evgeny Kuznetsov as well, because he plays really, really well against Vegas. In the 6 games they've played each other, he's got 8 points. So I think we've seen him do really well against Vegas in the past.
I like how you're getting a little sneaky with your DFS targets in the last week here, Steele. I like it. I like it a lot. I'm fired up right now for everything that's happening in the NHL. Even for a mini 4-game board, I still found 2 games here that I think are going to be great. That was the first one. The second one, I think it's obvious. The Dallas Stars at Edmonton Oilers. That's the other one with major playoff implications on the line. I'm sorry, Colorado, Seattle is not turning the page for me. And the Chicago Blackhawks at Arizona Coyotes. You might as well chuck a hand grenade in that one. But I will say this, that Chicago-Arizona game, and I had to mention it in terms of DFS, is exactly where I think you want to go to augment Steele's picks here. I don't know where you're going with your second game, but I had here in my notes that this Chicago Blackhawks and Arizona game has all the makings of a crooked number. We'll get to big time bets in a minute. Stay tuned. But just by peripheral scoring here, Steele, and taking a look at some of these games over the past week for these two teams, oh my goodness, have there been some crooked numbers. And that means good nights for their forward group. So I really don't think you can go wrong and find some value down both of those lineups to really fill in aside the guys that you have mentioned and will.
I like that too. I actually did highlight that Colorado and Seattle Kraken game as another potential superstar kind of, you know, you're going to pick your superstars from that game, and then the Blackhawks, Coyotes can be where you fill out the rest of your roster. But, you know, just doing a little bit of research on the season, this is their third and final meeting between these two teams. Colorado has won both of the first two meetings.
Shocker.
Nathan MacKinnon wasn't in that first game where they won 7-3, and I'm going to get to that for my DFS bets, but he didn't play in that first game because of injuries and COVID as well. But I'm also going to take MacKinnon in this game. Nice. He's got 15 points in his last 11 games. Cale Makar, 12 in his last 12 games. I'm also going to throw Andre Burakovsky in there because in the first two matchups, he had 5 points against the Kraken. So I think, again, that's another guy who's not going to be super expensive. He's going to be around 4,000, maybe 4,500. And he's played well against this team. And he can, like you said, Flip, he can augment the superstar guys I'm choosing for my DFS selections.
And that's just it, because things are not going to be pretty with only a week and change to go here, right? And I think that's one of the things I wanted to mention in terms of DFS as we wrap the season up. There are going to be some guys getting rested. There are going to be some teams playing a different style because they know they have so much on, especially in the East, because there's more solidified there. So I think we're really going to have to pick our spots here as the season winds down. Not many days left. DFS can be tricky at the end of the year. So I think we're really onto something, though, Steele. I think you can't go wrong with filling the top of the lineup with a couple of stud superstars in advantageous situations, and then go to some maybe Garbo teams at the bottom and augment that roster with some spots like Chicago and Arizona. That could be 6-4, right? Hey, it could be 2-1 as well, but I'll get to big time bets and my explanation in a second here.
Yeah, and you highlighted something actually, and we'll talk about it real quick before we get to big time bets. Please. But, you know, potentially resting some of these guys. We know Austin Matthews right now is injured. Yeah. Do you think they rest him for the rest of the year? Because I was just looking, Sheldon Keefe said that he could play through the injury, but what's the point? And I know he's at 58 goals right now. Do you want him to get him back in to get to 60? Or do you rest him for the entire season and make sure he's healthy and ready to go for the first round?
I'm really glad that you brought up Matthews because that was my bad. I forgot to mention it off the top of the episode. And the Leafs are saying minor injury. I don't care if he even scratched his fingernail. He sits. He sits for the rest of the season. Actually, put him in a hotel 2 blocks from the arena just in case, and put him in a bubble too, just in case a puck doesn't come flying up into the rafters and catch him in the nose. Because honestly, Steele, I don't give a damn about 58 goals. This team needs to get out of the first round of the playoffs. And if Austin Matthews is dealing with another injury, and I see multiple elimination games with that guy not registering a goal as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, I'm calling up downtown MLSE. I'm saying, what are you doing? Because that guy should be on the bench, because I don't know about you. I've seen him go through enough injuries and enough struggles in the first round. Let the guy rest. Let him get his head right and let him come out and blow the doors off the first round, because if he's even at 60% Steele, don't get me started, because the Toronto Maple Leafs have gone 11-1-1 over their last 13 and are starting to look really good just in time to do what? Let Leaf Nation down in a big way. Holy crap, I said I wasn't going to go there today. Thanks for this question. Let's move on.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. Hopefully they just rest him for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
and I think, Flip, you and I have done a really, really good job at trying to keep our bias for the Toronto Maple Leafs out of this podcast. But as the playoffs are rolling around, I know for a fact you and I are going to, just let hell rain down on everybody, especially with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I'm very excited to see.
I'm coming unhinged, Steele. I'm coming apart at the seams.
The screws are coming a little bit loose on the flip side. I can't wait to see it. But before we get to big time bets, I need to let everyone know about Built Bar. At Built Bar, they are all about the taste. They make the taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy second. I don't know how, but they pull it off every single time. I think for me, the best part about Built Bars is that they are covered in 100% real chocolate. They only contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein. And if you haven't tried the Puffs yet, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. Puffs are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered, again, in 100% real chocolate, so it makes it 1,000 times better. Puffs are a fan favorite with incredible flavors of yummy churro, coconut marshmallow, and banana cream pie, as well as with the original bars, mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and creams. Go to Built.com and scroll down to the macros chart, and you'll be blown away. High protein, low cal, high fiber, low carbs. Once you're checking out, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Thank you for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every day. Don't forget, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, which also includes YouTube. So if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support out there. So thank you so much for tuning in and listening to today's episode. Flip, 4 games on the schedule, big time bets coming up. I know you were teasing that Blackhawks game a little bit. Is that where you're going first? Because I know I've got one bet from that matchup.
Yeah, let's go there first because my second pick and my lock of the night both come from the same game, from the Dallas at Edmonton game. And look, this 4-game board, it's not great. It's not great. There's a couple of spots here that I'm liking, so I'm keeping this one super simple, and you're going to hear this over the last week and change as we head to the playoffs, because I would recommend that you save that money for these games, because this last week can get a little hairy. As mentioned, if players start to get rested, these games will be harder and harder to handicap. But for now, lineups are staying the same, and I'm taking a look at the Chicago Blackhawks-Arizona game with one lens and one lens only. This one screams high-scoring, Steele. That's the only spot that I see here. I don't want to get nitty-gritty trying to back the Blackhawks, which you could do because Arizona has been so bad. Don't want to get into the Arizona Coyotes at home, not with a 10-foot pole. But I do feel comfortable backing the over here. The total has gone over the number in 5 straight for Chicago. The total has gone over the number in 5 of 6 for Arizona. And, man, have you seen how bad Arizona has been over the last 3 games? Yeah. I know we showed them some love while they had that streak there where Nick Schmaltz was going off for 6 and 7 points a night. But, man, have they come back down to earth in an aggressive style. How about 21 goals against in 3 games, Steele?
Yeah.
21 goals against in 3 games.
We knew it was going to happen. Knew it was going to happen.
Man, they're going over the number just with goals against from the opposing team, let alone their own goals. So let's go 6.5 over the number. I know the most recent meeting between these two did stay under, but the game just before that earlier in this season featured 11 goals. I have a feeling that's what we're going to see tonight. And I don't know, maybe it's 5 or 6 from Chicago, because I think that could be the trend that continues. I'm going to leave this one alone now. Chicago at Arizona over 6.5. That's my first pick of the night, Steele.
Yeah, that's also my first pick of the night. Not the over, but I am taking the Alex DeBrincat anytime goal in this game. It feels like I've been waiting for him to score his 40th goal for 2 months, when in fact it's only been 2 weeks. He hasn't scored a goal in the last 7 games, so I think DeBrincat is just due for one, especially against this team that's putting up some crooked numbers. I think this is also a high-scoring game, but I'm going to take the Alex DeBrincat goal, anytime goal in this matchup, so he hits the 40 mark.
I absolutely love that one. I know sometimes when we mention our picks back and forth, we kind of go, you know what, I'm feeling that one of yours. I'm feeling that one of yours, Steele, for sure. I think this is a great spot for DeBrincat to pop 40. Also, it's the kind of thing that he is running out of time and he's running out of good situations, and this is definitely the situation. It's not getting any better than this. I love that. What I do love as well, Steele, and let me explain real quickly that I think the Dallas Stars are a bit of a facade. I know that they are currently holding down another wild card spot, but I called it a couple of weeks ago, and it's still a long shot because they are 4 or 5 points up. I still think they fall out of it. And I'll tell you why super quickly. Their last 10 games, Steele, they have 5 wins, but 4 of those wins came against San Jose, New York Islanders, the Blackhawks, and the Sharks again, with losses to the Devils, the Leafs, the Kraken, and the Canucks. I don't know about you, but that does not make me feel good, especially Jake Ottinger has basically lost the crease over the last week and a half to Scott Wedgwood, who has been a lot better.
Yeah.
All I got to say is this. If Scott Wedgwood is the guy you're counting on to get you into the playoffs, I'm going with the other team. And that's saying a lot because it's Cuckoo Mike Smith in net for the Edmonton Oilers. But hold the phone because Mike Smith, back-to-back shutouts and actually looking really good somehow. Do I think they make noise in the playoffs? I don't know. That's a whole other show. But I love this spot for Edmonton, who, aside from a blip on the radar there a week ago, they've been solid. 8 out of 10 of their last 8 and 10 out of their last 10. And Dallas just looked awful the other night. They got a beat down late on them by the Vancouver Canucks. And I'm wrapping it up at this, Steele. Edmonton Oilers on the money line. Plus, I got to go back to my boy McJesus for an anytime apple. McDavid, anytime apple, is my lock of the night. In 14 career regular season games against the Stars, he has 8 goals and an assist per game at 14 assists. These Oilers need this win to hold down that second spot, Steele. McDavid has gone pointless in back-to-back games, and he doesn't do that very often. I expect a big bounce back from McDavid and a big night from the Oilers. Give me the Oilers on the money line, minus 160, and McDavid anytime assist for my lock of the night, and I am done speaking.
All right, I like that pick as well. I still think the Dallas Stars make it. I don't think Vancouver or Vegas makes it at this point, but we'll see what happens in the last handful. It's going to be close for sure. My second pick of the night, I'm going back to the Colorado Avalanche on the puck line against the Seattle Kraken.
Here he is.
They dominated the first game this year, 7-3 without McKinnon. So with McKinnon being on a 15 points in his last 10 game or 11 games, I think he's going to be a big difference maker. I'm taking the Avalanche on the puck line, but for my lock of the night, you know what it is. Cale Makar, anytime assist. It's hit for Flip every single time this year. So, hey, I figured it's got a hit for me. So that's my reasoning behind it.
I like it.
My lock of the night, Cale Makar, anytime assist. Flip's lock of the night, anytime assist from Connor McJesus, Connor McDavid, the guy who pretty much runs the Edmonton Oilers right now. Pencil it in, lock it in, do what you got to do to make some money on these bets right now. I've loved every single bet that we've made so far, Flip.
Hey, don't jinx it, Steele. And like my boy Lil Wayne said, either be good or be good at it, baby. And we're trying to be good at it. So let's get this money. Playoff predictions coming up big way in the next week. So stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah, and thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode, making it your first listen every day. If you want more gambling advice on what you should pick, but for not just hockey, make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q with insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like this podcast right here. So if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Once you do, you'll get the latest episodes of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. 7 o'clock in the morning, Monday to Friday, Eastern time. You don't want to miss out. Like Flip said, with the playoffs coming right around the corner, a lot of content, a lot of big-time bets, and a lot of hot takes going to be coming out for the playoffs. Thank you again for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.